So I've mentioned to you that there are two options that are there for Americans in the 1930s. To continue down this path of individualism that had produced a roaring 20s, or to embrace a new progressivism and the governmental policies that go along with it. Well, what choice do Americans make in the 1930s? They make the choice to embrace progressivism. And the American public's embrace of progressivism leads to putting in place all of the New Deal policies that make up this very interesting time in American history. I want to turn your attention then to the choice and why we made the choice that we did in the 1930s. I want to turn your attention to McClay's introduction to his chapter titled The New Deal. This is on page 297. He writes, "What if Calvin Coolidge had still been president when the great stock market crash of October 1929 had occurred? What might he have done? Well, it is of course impossible to know for sure, but it seems likely that he would have responded by taking little or no governmental action to restore stock price levels. It also seems likely that he would have intervened as little as possible in the operation of the economy once recessionary forces had started to take hold in 1930. Aside from reducing federal spending and taxation further, he would likely have left the economic system to correct itself, much as it had in the 1920-1921 recession, by allowing wages and prices to fall as necessary and allowing businesses to downsize or close until the economy found a healthy new footing, a firm foundation from which it could rally." So what are we being told by McClay in his assessment of Calvin Coolidge and his assessment of this idea of Coolidge's governmental policy, really the governmental policy of the 1920s that is known as laissez-faire, or would known by the pejorative laissez-faire? What Coolidge and others like him believed is that business and economics works in a cycle. There are good times and there are bad times. There are times of great growth and then there are times where growth slows down. And this is part of the natural process of the capitalistic business cycle. That yes, government is there as much as possible to maintain the rule of law, to maintain that there are no monopolies, to try and encourage equality of opportunity within these economic systems. But the power that we have in overseeing an economy is slight. Because what drives an economy, what defines an economy, are all of the little individual decisions that every member of that economy makes. The choice to purchase a car or not purchase a car, to choose one job or not, to invest or not, to save your money or not. All of these decisions that individuals are making make up the overall economy. So as a planner, you can look at what's going on, you can try to encourage the right thing, you can try to encourage right policy, but oftentimes the best thing that you can do is leave things alone. Now, what is the myth that surrounds the end of the 1920s and the early 1930s as we enter into this age of the New Deal and as we enter into an embrace of progressivism? The great myth of the age was that Herbert Hoover, the man who becomes president, he's elected president in 1928 when Calvin Coolidge decides not to run for re-election. The myth is that Hoover likewise believed in this laissez-faire, hands-off-the-economy approach, when the reality is that many of Hoover's policies between 1928 and 1932 would be those same policies that FDR and other progressive thinkers tried to implement in the 1930s to turn the economy around. What we learn in McClay's rendering of Herbert Hoover, and also other excellent renderings of Herbert Hoover, one given to us, for example, by the historian Paul Johnson, is that Hoover very much viewed himself as a progressive. But more importantly, Hoover had a great identification with the notion that he was a great engineer. He'd been an engineer all of his life. He knew when he saw a mechanical or civil engineering problem that he could fix it. And he believed that he had it within his power, after being elected president during the stock market crash, to be able to fix the stock market, to be able to make sure that it runs correctly. So he's looking at this problem almost as if you're a small engine repair person, and you look at a small engine that's broken, and you look, how can I make this engine work again? So Hoover's answer to the stock market crash was to do what? To extend federal lines of credit to the stock market to keep the economy floating during this time when McClay and Johnson argue that he ought to have let things settle down and go back to where they were. Instead of allowing the business people who took on the risk of investing in the stock market in the 1920s and made a grand amount of money in doing so, instead of allowing those individuals to pay the price for their risky investments, instead the federal government continues to lift up the economy, not to the benefit of everyone within it, but to the benefit of those individuals who stood at the top of that economy. Note here that McClay will argue that 5% of Americans possessed 1/3 of the economy at this time. So they did very well by the governmental policy that tried to keep things afloat. It's the people themselves who have been purchasing vehicles who had to suffer from high unemployment rates and high inflation rates that then suffered the consequences of this governmental intervention. So Hoover, the great engineer, tried to fix the economic problem in the 1920s and early 1930s, and he's known for his failure to do so. Why then, when FDR does something similar and proposes a similar policy, is FDR more beloved by the people, more embraced by the people? And I think the answer to this question is given well by McClay and likewise by Johnson. FDR had the ability to relay a message, to communicate a message of hope to the American people. Here, this book is titled Land of Hope. You can be the best engineer in the world and you can try to fix every problem and believe that you know all the details of what makes an economy go wrong. But if you're unable to inspire the people around you, to speak to the American people, to speak to what they're suffering, and to encourage them forward that no matter what you'll do, and these are FDR's words, we will try something to make this problem better. If you're unable to do that, you can be the best engineer in the world, but it's not going to get you anywhere. It's not going to make you popular, and it's not going to allow you to lead people. So really, the defining aspect of FDR's presidency is his ability to communicate this grand theme of recovery, of hope, a theme that is then embraced by the American people and that allows him to become, at least at the beginning, a very popular president.